by our six expert panelists across the industry for cybersecurity and awareness. They're here to give you their expert perspectives and practical approaches just for reducing fraud risks and strengthening security measures. And really just how to recognize like common threats, vulnerabilities, as well as approaches for establishing effective defenses and safeguarding your financial assets. And we'll also try to entwine some of like, you know, the importance of continuous education and staying abreast of the latest developments. But before I introduce today's panelists, I just thought I'd set the stage with just some striking statistics just in the area of fraud and security. According to data collected by the Federal Trade Commission, reported losses in 2024 exceeded $12.5 billion. This was up 25% since 2023. Now, they haven't released the data for 2025, and I'm sure it's going to be just as striking, if not even higher. And each year, the Association of Financial Professionals publish this Payments and Fraud Control Security Accounts. And according to the 2025 report, 79% of organizations report being victims of payment fraud attempts. And among those that encounter this fraud, only about 22% have recovered like at least 75%, while 58% recoup less than 75% of their losses. Also, the data shows that the three most primary fraud attempts really is that checks, paper checks, continue to be the most common target for payment fraud. 63% of the organizations report having check fraud in 2024. And what's interesting about this is just how many people still use checks, just because they think it's really the misconception that checks are really safer than digital alternatives, when that's quite the contrary. Checks really just expose you to like more sensitive banking information, increase the risk of fraud and activities such as unauthorized ACH attempts and mail theft. The number two most common fraud attempts is really no surprise to any of us, is business email compromise. And 63% of the people report that as having having that type of fraud. And wire transfers are now the primary payment type targeted by business email compromise, overtaking ACH credits. So that's just a little bit of some information. And at the end of the session, we'll have Nicole from our bank. We'll be reviewing just some of the best practices just to like address those three primary fraud attempts. So now, without further delay, let me introduce our expert speaker panel. We have Meg Speranza from the Resiliency Program Manager at MassCyberCenter. Meg is focusing on presenting information about how to improve cyber resiliency. She also will share some resources, including how to get grants for nonprofits and small businesses intending to make cyber resiliency more accessible. Next, we have Emily Greenwood, President and owner of EKG Networking. Emily will explore the complexities of network security and information technologies best practices. Okay, next we have Peter Marshall. Yes, okay, just want to make sure you're in the owner of Marshall Insurance Agency, who's been in the field for like over 25 years. 30 now, you know, time goes by so quick. And he's going to discuss the importance of cyber insurance and our defense strategy and key aspects to consider in a cyber liability plan. Sean Carter, he's the CEO and president of NEACH. My understanding, he is the digital expert here on the panel. And Sean will be really discussing the evolving landscape of financial technology and payment security. Next, we have skip over here, Kevin Powers, new to our panel this year. Welcome. Kevin is an accomplished cybersecurity leader with over 25 years of experience spanning law, business, military, and higher education. He serves as a faculty director and lecturer in law for the Masters of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity, Risk Governance at Boston College Law. And we're excited to have Kevin here, so as he will bring us his perspectives on particularly like around AI and awareness and how to adopt it safely. And lastly, we have Patrick Tracey, an experienced litigator and partner at Saul and Ewing, and he'll present on the development of comprehensive cybersecurity programs, including the establishment of effective policies and procedures. He'll also address current legal trends in cybersecurity and discuss preventative strategies businesses can implement and strengthen their defense. Okay, so let's jump in now. I have questions to ask them. I pulled a lot from what everybody, people put in the registration, some things that were near and dear to them. So we'll start by asking some questions, and we'll leave enough time at the end too for everybody to further engage in discussion. So if you do have any questions that come to mind, Nicole is in the back. She can ask if someone's speaking to something that resonates like as they're talking. So Patrick, I'm going to start with you. Year after year, data shows, as I mentioned, that the business email compromise is a significant threat and leading method for cyber fraud attempts. Just could you speak to some of the legal implications of the business email compromise schemes and the fraud?
Sure. So, as everyone knows, with business email compromise, fraud comes in a variety of forms. Right now, Kevin and I were just talking about this. Business email compromise, just that fraud alone, has reached approximately $2.7 billion. So it's pervasive across every industry, every profession. It can hit somebody that is just sitting at their computer at home. It can hit major institutions. So from a business perspective, that, and we'll talk about this more today, but it really shows and demonstrates the importance of having solid policies and procedures in place, not only to prevent it, but when something does happen, how to handle, a cyber incident. For the courts really, this is an evolving area of the law. So the courts really aren't sure how to deal with this. So when it comes to liability, a lot of times what they're doing is what party was in the best position to prevent fraud? And if they think it's the institution or whether it's the individual or the group, that's who's going to be found liable. But it's really an unsettled area of the law and one that continues to evolve today.
And then anyone else can feel free to jump in if you want to add anything. I'll go to Sean next. Can you talk to us about some of the latest ways fraudsters are trying to trick people and offer any tips you have that businesses can use to keep their payment systems and customers safe?
Yeah, so fraud is evolving in payments. So as mentioned, check is obviously the most easiest payment to compromise, right? On average, 12 people see a check from the time you write it till the time it's cashed, right? Do any of us know 12 honest people? Right, so there's just too many people in the chain. But with business email compromise and business account takeovers, a lot of what's happening is very basic from a fraudster standpoint, because they can't break into networks like the wire system or online banking as easy as they did in the past. These 2011 banks are required to have updated things on online banking. So the fraudsters said, all right, we're just going to go after the weakest link in the chain, which is you, the customer of the bank. And fraud used to be easy because we could say, let's just get the bad company out of the payment system. The person originating the debit, stealing your money, we can just kick them off the networks. But what they did was they flipped it now. So you, as the good guy, are sending the money out because you're being duped to do that, right? So they're saying, hey, change the amount of money you're going to pay me, or send it to this new account number. And the simplest way to prevent this type of fraud is have payment controls in your organization where you don't take instruction via email or via a random phone call from one of your largest vendors saying, hey, we're changing our account number. Even though we've been doing business with you for 40 years, we're now changing everything about our banking relationships, and people just go, okay. And they send the payment, and by the time, the beauty of the fraud is, by the time you realize there was a fraud, it's gonna be like 20 days later when they call you to say, we never got payment. And now it's way too late for anybody to help you. And if you think about a debit coming out of your account, you can see that immediately, call the bank, and we can work on it much faster. So the fraudsters have evolved to a much simpler form, in my opinion, of fraud, but it's just much more successful for two reasons: the timing, and they flip the script on who the bad guy is in the transaction, and all they really need is some money mule on the other end to move the money for them. You know, and that's why the courts are struggling with determining liability, because the bank is in theory doing everything they're supposed to do, following a payment instruction. It just happens to not be the right instruction, so it's a tricky balance thing.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what Pat said and then tie in there too on the liability piece. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was last week, and was talking about recent data breach cases. And it was along the lines of 78% of cases were kicked out of the courts, meaning they were dismissed. And it comes back for, and this is all data breaches, okay? And I'll start with this just to put it out there, and I think everyone would agree. The most important thing you need to do is protect our business operations. You know, that's priority number one. The person identifiable non-public information of your customers are priority number one too. They're all baked in there. But it's really building out those defenses and getting the technologies in place and the right people to build out those protections. When you get hit with a data breach, the way the courts are looking at this now is, you know, everyone raise your hand, how many got a slip in the mail saying like you were part of a data breach? Like, and like multiple times. And if you were lucky, you were part of the Tim Hortons one where they gave you a cup of coffee and a donut to settle the case. And that's a true story. And many people took up on that. At least they got something tangible. For the most part, the way the courts look at this is there's no actual damages. You know, there's like everyone's getting part of a breach here, and you can't have speculative damages, and Pat can talk more on that, what that means. So more and more cases are getting kicked out. There's still that nuisance of the plaintiff's attorneys coming in, the class action attorneys suing. But what I see going on, like, you know, from the law school research that we're looking at, is the regulations right now are all in place. There's going to be less enforcement over the next 3 years under the current administration anyways. But courts are gonna, you can't just have data breaches going on, and then there's no consequences. So you look to California, and where California goes, New York goes, and where Massachusetts goes, and everyone else starts following, is they have automatic damages. Meaning that it's no longer speculative. If there's a data breach and personally identifiable information goes out there, you pass go. It doesn't mean that it's automatic, you lose in court, but those cases move forward. So right now, the courts are trying to figure things out, but I think you're gonna see more and more state courts coming out with statutes. And I think Massachusetts is, you know, hot in line on that, where they're gonna have these automatic damages, which still, who wins in all that? I hate to say it, is the lawyers, the plaintiff bar, the class action lawyers, and the individuals who lose their data might get $1 or $2, and the companies will spend a lot of money to keep protecting what they're doing, because as the government said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if that's the case, you know, like, why are you being penalized? I'll jump off my soapbox.
If you want to add,
Oh, you got it.
go ahead.
Sure.
So actionable from this is kind of start with your onboarding with your staff. So when your staff first comes on board, you should have some forms and things. You're written in a security policy that says how you're protecting your data, that they should be aware of things, that the boss will never contact them and say, hey, welcome aboard, come and get me a gift card. You know, those are some actionable things you can start with in the beginning. Have regular staff meetings, have a weekly staff meeting where you just go, here's what's going on. Even if it's something that ends up being, you know, packaged or Zoom, you're talking to your staff on a regular basis, and you're getting a sense of what they're doing in their world, what they're seeing coming at them with their world. Offboarding is also important. knowing when staff leave, that all those resources that staff used were gathered back in and taken back into an organization, and that laptop isn't sitting on the shelf in the garage somewhere of your employee. So those are some actionable things you can do to kind of stop panicking about this a little bit and be panicked about it, but also positive pay that the bank has. Most banks now have positive pay. This is a godsend. A check doesn't go out unless you have said who it's going to, what the amount is, and what the date is. It won't get cashed, even if the amount's different, things like that. So just giving you some action. You're good? Like that way.
You can pass it back to Meg. 'cause I'm
Oh,
not-
okay.
Nice try. So I mentioned it's Massachusetts Cybersecurity Month, Meg, and this month the theme is cybersecurity is economic security. So can you just speak to us a little bit about that? Maybe give some examples on how that relates to that?
Sure, you know, the last question was a good example of economic security. If we're losing data and we're losing money, it's not good for the economy. So the more you can protect now, whether you're a small business or whether you are an individual, it's really important to protect your data and put things in place to help yourself with that. So it's, we believe that it's all about people, process, and technology. It's not just the technology alone. It's the policies that you have in place, you know. Protect yourself, put things, that's defense in depth, meaning that you've got a password policy and you change your password on a regular basis, and you have unique passwords. Use a password manager. If you don't want to, you remember one complicated password to get into your password manager, keep that in mind. Hold that close, but then the password manager takes care of the rest of the password, and it does sophisticated passwords, and it really does work. So password policy, technology to help you with the stuff, you know, make sure that if you're working from home, you have a router that, you know, that is configured correctly so that other people can't go on there and look at what you're doing on the internet. And really protect your data, protect your customer data, know where your data lives. It's still a wild west out there, and people don't recognize that they can be scammed, that things can happen. And I did have a check washed at one point, and it was horrible. So, meaning that somebody stole my check out of a mailbox or somewhere and washed it, and they had a different tube, and they had a different, much larger amount. And it was a pain. I had to do all kinds of things. And luckily the bank was very good to me and had insurance, and they opened the fraud and put the money back in my account and did an investigation and things like that. But you need to know what's out there and protect yourself.
She's referencing people who have their own personal routers in their houses, and they may not purchase the router from the vendor, Comcast or Verizon. So they're like, yeah, I update that. My husband updates that all the time. My wife updates that all the time. And they actually don't. So you got lovely little people living in your router following that. That's what she thought.
I want to add one thing on the economics. So you mentioned the FTC stats, there's IC3.gov, FBI internet crime complaints. The average loss in Massachusetts reported is $22,000. 49% of the country can't come up with $300 in the event of an emergency. So you see where this is going, right? This is very bad. And when you count those dollars, one of the problems in our industry, and I said this publicly and I get in trouble, is we don't think about the other part of the transaction. That $12 billion stolen is not going to fund churches, youth centers, it's going to gangs, drugs, sex trafficking, all these things that are just awful for society. So that second half of the transaction is just brutal. And I have some stats I can share that bank can send out on just the trafficking of children alone from wire transfer fraud. It's heartbreaking. So you click on an email, you think you're doing the right thing, the CEO says, hey, send out a wire. You didn't mean to, but you just sold the kid, right? And so you know, I hate to be blunt about it, but until we all realize what the end of this is. You know, you have to take this stuff serious, it's not just your own data, right? When you go into a company, the business owner's trusting you to protect their livelihood as well, so. We just need better hygiene, but the amount of money is insane. And there's a report that North Korea rebuilt part of its nuclear arsenal from pig butchering scams in the US. This is a country that says they want to nuke us and our own citizens paid for the nuclear weapons. Think about that. It's just horrifying, so.
Well, that's a good warning right there. I'll just add, one thing here, I think, you know, I was talking to Pat here, so most businesses here are small and mid-sized businesses, and then we have the banking here, so. Financial services are the most sophisticated in securing, their systems and their operations and protecting data. And part of that, like for the small, mid-sized business, what you really have to do is get the right people to help you set it up, you can't do it on your own. But you have to, you know, the business is business. So how do you spend smartly to bring the right people in there to help you set it up? Because if you try to do it on your own, no matter what you read, no matter what you try to do, you're not gonna be able to do it. So you have to be very savvy on bringing in managed services and things along those lines. But before you jump into that, you wanna talk to the right people who can step back and say, okay, this is what your assessment, we'll do a quick cyber assessment. This is what you have, this is what you can afford, this is how we get you there. And so you have to be very, you know, I look at someone over the room here, he told me not to say anything to Brian Hugley of Side Channel, he's right down the street from you, and he has these virtual CISOs that can come in and consult with you, and I have no investment in that at all. But that's what they do, and there's a lot of companies out there that can help you on the small business side. Another piece is too, not to point you to the law, but if you look at New York DFS Part 500, go look at that. The law itself gives you like a nice schematic of what you can do to build, okay, your cyber program. It talks about multi-factor authentication, pen testing, vulnerability management, building out an incident response plan, operations, things along those lines. But it's a nice little roadmap, and it's used and it's built and codified the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. So it talks about how you govern and build out those policies. There's a lot there, but a small and mid-sized business, you're not gonna have a playbook that's this high. You're gonna have something small, and you don't wanna overdo with the policies and procedures. You wanna have what you need so you can run your business and protect your data.
I'll just add on to what Sean and Kevin have already referenced, but you know, when clients call me, it's usually bad. That's usually when something horrible has happened to them, and that's why they call me. You don't want to have to call me, so in order not to have to call your attorney to help you with the fallout and the negative results, if you're a business owner, the negative publicity and everything that comes with it, invest in the appropriate framework, the good cyber framework, so that you don't need an attorney down the road. I look at it this way, the more proactive you are, the less reactive you will have to be. In other words, although it costs money to protect your business, it's a short-term hit for a very long-term gain, and it will preserve those business operations that are the heart of every business. So just my piece.
Thank you. I'm gonna add, oh, well, you want to add something?
Oh, I was thinking insurance.
Well, that was gonna be my next question, right? Here we go. So along the same lines, can you speak to us about, you know, is there really any difference to adding cyber, security insurance? My business policy, you know, is there one size fits all or different solutions to the point, like small businesses, large businesses? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So you can often add cyber liability or data breach coverage to your standard business policy with your property, your general liability. Sometimes that's okay. The other option is to get a standalone cyber liability policy. And typically those separate policies have a lot more coverage. It's broader coverage. You can get higher limits. It's a more well-rounded solution. And for an example, if you add it to your business owner policy, which again, sometimes that's okay. Each different insurance company has their own cyber policy forms. So if company A is endorsing it onto your policy and it's a good, well-rounded plan, company B might really be bare bones and you don't know what you're getting. A lot of the insurance companies that will endorse the coverage onto an existing policy, they don't include cyber extortion, for example, which is very common and you need it. So getting a separate standalone policy is the way to go. And kind of touching on what these guys have been saying, the application, when you're filling out to get the quote, that can be really helpful in coming up with a plan because they're asking you all the questions. Do you do this? Do you have a multi-factor authentication? What kind of, procedures do you have in place? All of these questions are really going to help you. If you're not already doing some of those things, it's going to kind of say, okay, I think I should be doing these things. So yeah, it's, of course, number one, you definitely want to get cyber coverage if you have a computer, if you even just accept credit card payments. Even if you don't have a computer, you should have cyber coverage. And then number two, just make sure that you're getting what you actually think you're getting.
Thanks. Okay, do you want to add?
Just
something?
add on.
Go ahead.
One of the things you get with your cyber coverage too, that you're absolutely right, because you're gonna have that checkbox. So you're gonna build out your program that fits you. But this is what you understand, what you get is part of that coverage, you have a data breach or there's a ransomware attack. You get your lawyer, you get your forensics team, you get your crisis management, and then you also can get communications. That's all baked into that. And, there's always this counter of like, well, you're gonna get a team that you don't know. Well, you can, like, if I have my small business and I work with Pat, I can bring Pat on as long as he accepts those rates that are part of the insurance, and then you could bring in his forensics. So they actually know you, something happens, and you're good to go, and they're gonna work really quick to get you back to operational readiness. So that's why you really should have cyber insurance.
Exactly what you were just saying. So I had a customer, a dentist office, and they were in heavy acquisition mode. And this is about 5 years ago. They started with 2 practices. Quickly, they got up to 8 different practices crossing multiple states. So initially, for what they had and what they needed, we had a very good endorsement on their business policy. But as they grew, I brought to their attention, you're at the point now where we should really be looking at a more specialized standalone policy. Sure enough, a couple months after they took that policy, one of their locations, they went in Monday morning, couldn't get into the computers. They'd been hacked, shut down. I forget the amount that the people that shut them down were extorting them for, but instantly we reported the claim, called it into the insurance company, and because that's what this insurance company specializes in, they had the attorneys on the phone right away. They had an IT company out there right away doing the forensics to figure out exactly what happened. So they mitigated the total amount of the loss because they acted so quickly and they knew exactly what to do. And my client was very happy that they switched to that policy before that happened.
Great, thanks. Okay, good information here. All right, Emily, I'll circle back to you. You touched upon this a little bit. We were talking about this when we were setting up this client, right? Okay, so we have like 3 different work models, like in office, hybrid, complete remote, people working in coffee shops that are supposed to be at home, so really, can you just talk a little bit like the technology items that we need to consider and what we should be reviewing with our employees to really help them understand how to safeguard while working remotely?
Sure, and again, the regular staff meetings go back to that, because you'll be able to figure out where somebody's working from, what's going on in their life, and kind of the day-to-day things that happen from that. When you're at home, again, some people get a stipend to work from home now, so they can buy themselves a modem, they can upgrade their router, they can do different things. Some people don't provide their own modem and router. They use the company, whether it's Comcast or Verizon. What's great about using the company like Comcast or Verizon for a home user, they don't want you to get hacked. They don't want to bring the network down. So in a lot of cases, they are putting together action plans and letting you know, hey, somebody went to a website, we blocked it. There was a dangerous IP, we blocked it. They're rebooting your router on a regular basis and updating it. So in some ways, those are good. Wrapping around that employee with a VPN, a virtual private network, so their communications back and forth to your company are encrypted end to end is hugely important. That doesn't preclude saying, hey, you can go buy your own router now. Picture security as lines in the sand. You know, you always, the castle, you always want other things in front of the castle before the people get into the building to raid the castle. You want them out, the alligator, the dragon, the fire, you know, the arrows throwing tar and all the crazy stuff that goes on. You want all that because by the time they get to the castle, they're like, you know what? I'll move on to another castle that isn't as well protected. If you're in the Starbucks, their business model is making coffee, not providing secure internet. Lovely making coffee, but any coffee shop, the internet's a secondary thing that they're providing to you free of charge with no expectation of privacy or security. The VPN is gonna help, but you've pulled off that layer. So having your staff travel around, if you have remote working staff, having them have a hotspot is gonna be one of the most secure things on top of the VPN, because that adds that extra layer of security. And again, onboarding and offboarding. In a lot of cases, we make sure people have what's called absolute trace on their laptops. Their laptop gets stolen, we can find it or nuke it. And, you know, if you have people with sensitive sales and private information on it, that's super important. Because what happens to that laptop? Where was it when it got stolen? So the staff meetings are huge. Daily touches with people are huge to just get a sense of what's going on. Because once you have kind of the daily sense of things, you can see the patterns that develop in your world. Activity logs. You know, we onboarded this new person, we offboarded this person. This changed or something changed in our world. You can start to see patterns as you keep track of that stuff. And that'll help you develop the muscle memory to go, wait a minute, I don't want to click on that. Or wait a minute, something doesn't seem right here. And that's what you really need to get to, is where protecting things becomes a muscle memory rather than responding to somebody who's making you scared to click on something.
Right. Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier about, and it is that castle analogy. You've got different layers of technology. You've got policies like password one I talked about, but there are other types of policies, multi-factor authentication, which is a combination of things. And the more you can have in place, the better for, you know, preventing people. It's all sort of a package. But you have to start thinking in terms of, how am I going to protect the town, which is the lower part of the castle? Okay, now we're getting up into the business. How am I going to protect my customer data, crown jewels?
Right, well, fast enough, we now know that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. So, I think, Kevin, you mentioned business and legal imperative. So how should boards and senior leadership recalibrate their approach? Especially with the age of AI, I hated to say that word, is emerging and regulatory pressures are increasing. So I know we could have a whole seminar on AI, but we'll just have it today.
I guess from the governance level, is to move slow. You know, there's like this whole idea of, hey, we have artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, whatever. Let's go just jump in. Okay, well, that's fine. You don't want to run away from it. AI is the future. It's now. But when you do it, you have to do it at a slow pace. Like, why are you doing it? If it's just like, hey, we're going to use this because everyone else is, so let's just jump in. That's probably not the smart move. Okay, it's more, hey, how can this help us be more efficient, cost saving, and do things in a secure manner that helps the business, protects our customers, and protects our employees. So when we go out and talk to boards, you know, usually, you know, when I'm speaking to a board, it's like a Fortune 500 or something like that. But they have the same issues that small and mid-sized businesses do as well. You know, I'll give you a couple of examples. Actually, this is a great one because we're at a bank here. So I was doing a AI talk with bank examiners. Okay, so the FI, So they had one thing, and I was talking about like, oh, you're gonna bring in like Copilot, Gemini, you have to make sure it's the closed version, the business version, meaning that whatever you put in there, it's all encrypted, it's not going out, none of your sensitive data is going out there. And then a query came back and the person said like, hey, I use ChatGPT to draft all my emails that are coming from work. Where like, so this person's getting an email from a customer or a banking, another banker saying like, hey, here's all this financial information. Pumping it into the ChatGPT, which is not closed, so it's all going out to the web, and then responding. And so, the question was, does that mean that's a data breach? And I had to play it off and go like, oh, that's a great example. Of course, that's a data breach, but no one here would ever do that. And the person was like sweating, my God. So, yeah, so to answer your question, it's like, why are you bringing it in? You want everyone to understand it, how to use it, make sure everyone's trained. And if you don't know anything about the technology, don't just jump in and say, okay, everyone use ChatGPT and have at it. Instead, start with the governance piece. That's what everyone's talking here. Like, what's the reason we're gonna do this? What's the policy and how can we secure everything? And I'll give you one last example and I'll pass the mic over. There was a Fortune 50 company that implemented the whole policy. They decided like, hey, we're gonna use Copilot, we're gonna, it's closed. They had the trainings. Once they opened it up, what they found out is that access management policies weren't really as up to snuff as they thought. So you had all the employees had access to the CEO files, HR, and people like kind of knew like, oh, that person's in trouble, that person's getting fired tomorrow, and things along those lines. So be very careful once you open that up and put it into your system.
Well, one thing as it relates to your payments and the email compromise, the fraudsters are now using AI to write beautiful emails. We had one come to our office and I told the team, we should just pay it because this was brilliant. It was a fake invoice they created, the professional writing, that it would sounded like it was from the vendor that we normally do business with. So they're using AI. Your employees are probably using it, so it's a good idea to start having policies. So, and the risk of you saying nobody use AI, which is foolish because your employees are gonna do it. They're taking data off your system, putting it on their own machine, running it through an AI chatbot or whatever they're using to help them speed up the task. And now you've exposed yourself in multiple ways. So this, we have over 400 bank clients and I got about a third of them saying, oh, we're not doing AI. And it's like, okay, you're not. But everybody in the branch is Googling Regi questions and consumer protection and, some of the things you're looking for on the internet were not written or tagged appropriately for AI. So you get a lot of hallucinations, bad answers. Because if you have bad self-esteem, use AI. It's the most friendly thing ever. It makes you feel great about yourself because that's its goal, is to make you happy. That's why it gives you fake answers. It wants to give you something in return. So governance is so important with AI. Even if you got a 3-person shop, get a little policy. You can find them online. You can write your own if you have to, but we all have to start paying attention to this. And I was just reading something from the IT people with ChatGPT and all the emojis they like to use. People are embedding harmful, malicious things in there. So you think you're using, oh, this is so nice. No, done, account takeover, or they freeze your machine, or so we can't be afraid of it. You can't run from it, but you have to walk and make employees understand why you're going slow. Because some employees, well, oh, I already know this stuff. I'm the best AI person in my family, which is fine. It might be a family of one. But from a business standpoint, you have to understand what you're doing, because there is a big difference between your information staying in and going out. Email's another one. It's so great. I use it to draft emails. I'm a terrible writer, always have been. So it makes me sound like I'm not 5, right? So I love it. I love AI. But you really have to be careful, because the bad guys are all over this, right? Any shift in technology, you're like 10 years ahead of you. Because that's all they do. They don't work, right? They sit around and say, oh, what am I gonna do next? So just start with a basic policy, make your employees understand when it's okay to use it and when they can't. And, most adults follow rules, right? So if you just give a good framework for how they use it, they'll follow it, but if you just do the no, adults hate no. Like little kids, they're gonna find a way to use it, and now you're getting yourself in more danger.
So, great, in terms of examples, like early on, I had said, write me a WISP policy to AI. I didn't say write me a written internet security policy. What I got was poetry about WISPs. It was really kind of cool. With a little IT into it. But you can use that to start getting the juices flowing for policies. Write an IT policy and security manual, or look at my terms and conditions, see where the flaws are. And you're not getting any information in there. You're just kind of starting to get your own juices flowing and stuff. That's where AI is really great to kind of give you ideas and take things from there. And I'm real clear with customers. If somebody goes, hey, I need an internet security policy in 5 minutes, I'm like, here's the one AI wrote. Start with this and then we'll work from there. And then, we'll go from there. But you can do some really good work with it. It's just understanding the data in necessarily doesn't stay in.
I'm just gonna add in from a legal perspective, the underlying theme here is regardless of the size of business that you own, whether it's a small, medium, or a large corporation, one of the key things that the courts look at for liability perspective is how are the employees trained? What type of education was provided to them, whether it's on cybersecurity, data breaches, or now AI. I'll just tell you this real quick story. Last week, a major financial institution, administrative assistant was duped because she thought that her boss had emailed her and her boss called her, when in fact, it was AI, what do they call it now? Phishing? Yeah, so it's duping someone's voice.
Yeah.
It was a $5 million mistake, just gone in seconds. So again, whether we're talking about policies, procedures, different proactive measures or defensive mechanisms, it really comes back to educating yourself and providing the appropriate training to employees.
And speaking of appropriate training, an important thing is, if you're gonna try to draft policies using AI and things on those lines, you shouldn't do it, you should not do it if you don't have a background in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, or anything like that. And, this is something we teach our students. It's okay to iterate with it, but they're going to be professionals in this. You need real critical thinking and understanding. So you using it is fantastic because you're going back and forth and you're able to go, whack, that's wrong, this is right. But for us small business owners and mid-size, don't try to do it on your own. Make sure you bring a professional to help you do it.
It gets them at least thinking about the process
Yeah.
and knowing what they don't know.
Yeah, which is a lot.
If I can just add one more thing to that. What Sean was talking about and Patrick, about AI and how the fraudsters sending you those emails have become a lot more sophisticated and believable. I had a client in my office who for years I've been trying to get them to buy a cyber policy and they didn't need it. And then over the summer, a vendor that they work with and that they pay monthly, and they paid electronically every month. This summer, the admin received an email that looked and sounded just like it was from that vendor saying, we're now using a different bank, fill out this form and we'll set you up with our new bank so that the payments will continue. And so she did, and the owner called me as soon as they discovered it. And it was $35,000 that was taken out of their account. So sure enough, now they have a cyber policy, but everybody in the office looked at this email after the fact and said, absolutely, I would have done the same thing, which is very scary. And that's why you need a policy in place, not just insurance, but you need a policy up front about how you're gonna handle those things. But yeah, so I mean, I'm seeing it not as often as you guys, but too often.
And back to those staff meetings, one of the things we're teaching our banks to teach their clients like you is stop thinking they couldn't do that, right? You need to have a better imagination of what fraudsters can do. A lot of people say, oh, There's no way someone could do, yes, they can, and they're probably doing it. So you need to understand that the world is bad. Sorry, right? There's people out there. If you have money in a computer, they're trying to rob you. We were talking before, there's no longer a target for criminals. If you have money in a computer, you're a target. In the old days, you had to have X amount of dollars. They wouldn't do an account takeover if you didn't have a balance over a certain amount. We used to see those chats in the dark web of like, hey, this bank doesn't have anybody with over $1 million in an account, and they would ignore that bank. Now they just flood everybody with, so you just have to say to yourself, even in that example, like, we got an email, pick up the phone, call the vendor and say, hey, why after 30 years are you changing banks? And don't respond to the phone number in the email, because that's gonna be a fake number,
Yeah.
right? So, but that little step would have saved that person probably their job and $35,000. And unfortunately at banks, that $5 million error, that person's probably gone. They're no longer gonna be employed. And over what, right? They thought they would help with the CEO, everything's in a rush because we work so fast. And now you lose your job. So you have to stop. Just stop and say, wait a minute, is this how we normally do things? Can I just reach back out? I don't know if anybody that's a business owner, would you get mad if your staff double checked you on $100,000 wire? I don't see anybody getting fired for saying, hey, do we really want to do that? No, you're out. Like, that's not gonna happen, right? And and again, even experts get tricks. We fall for stuff. I have employees, we train on this, and they click on stuff, and we have to do an incident, we report to the board. It happens to everybody. This is and we gotta take the shame away from it, I think, too, is a problem in society. Everybody's afraid to say what they did. We're all getting ripped off by this stuff. So there should be no shame in it, right? The shame is if you don't learn from it, right? That's when it becomes a problem, you become a problem employee, so.
I'm gonna just take a break, see maybe some people have a few questions on here. We hit a lot of different topics. Anybody want to ask something to our panelists? If not, I'll continue to drive. Oh, hang on. I'll get.
You. So going back to, when you were talking about like remote work or hybrid work, and like using unsecure, Wi-Fi, I'm sure everybody in here has a phone on them with their work emails. Even if we're not connected to the Wi-Fi in the building, we're connected to some sort of cell tower. And could you just like speak to like even keeping our like work devices secure when we're going out to events or traveling, and maybe have a phone on us that has sensitive information?
Sure, and some of that's the company that you're working for may say, hey, you're gonna have a company phone that only company data is on, that you don't have Wi-Fi on. And that really depends on the company level and what they want to support. In a lot of small businesses and nonprofits, you're gonna be having a personal phone and a work phone. In some cases, in terms of work-life balance, we'll say to people, hey, use a separate application for the work phone and use the built-in for your personal. Because you can kind of wrap a little bit more around that, as well as not connecting to open Wi-Fi, not doing things like that. There's a lot of applications starting to come out for phones that are gonna help make them a little more secure. If you're using, Google Workspace or Microsoft Office 365, you can have the end-to-end encryption on things, and be able to have those secure conversations. So it really depends on the business that you're in and where your phone is at. We're telling people a lot of times, look, if you've got an iPhone 10, you need to be upgrading it. You need to stay on pace with the devices that are out there, so you're kind of in line with upgrades. Your phone shouldn't get more than 3 to 4 years old, before it gets updated. Just because of the nature of where it's at now, you can get a lot of updated devices and things like that. Limit the number of apps you have on your phone to what you need. So again, if you're doing work, you have work-based apps on your phone. If you're, in your personal life, look at where those apps are coming from. The Apple Store's done a really good job, so has Google Play, in somewhat ferrying out bad apps, but they're still out there. So knowing, why you grabbing that app, where is it made, who's the developer, how long, how often has it been updated? Restarting your phone regularly to make sure you clear things out and doing those updates as they come out, as painful as they are, getting those done. But not connecting to the open Wi-Fi, that is like deadly. And a lot of people walk up to you and go, hey, can you share the Wi-Fi with me? Can you share the contact with me? No, here's the contact, get it off my phone, or here's the information, I'll write it down for you. We've made technology so useful in some ways, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. So,
They go to sharing the phones too. All of us are consumers as well, not just working at a business. We know there's gangs throughout Boston at the historic sites and the tourist traps. They'll offer to take the picture for you on your phone. If you have your Venmo app on there, look after you get your phone back, they probably wiped out your Venmo account. So they're very skilled at it, 15-year-old kids who you would think are normal, or you may even say, oh, that looks like a street gang member. Some of the gangs are getting away from traditional crime and getting into financial crime because there's less severe consequences when they get caught. And it's just much easier to commit and safer for them. So, yeah, you really have to be careful. If you really need that picture, right? Do you really need the picture? Memories, keep it in your head. You'll be fine. You don't need it. Don't give your phone for someone else to take a picture. It's just, unless you know the person or you see them, we haven't seen any like family of fours that are all out robbing together, but that'll be the next iteration of this crime. So, yeah, it's bad. So if you're in a high, you're at a Woo Sox game or something, that's a perfect trap for you to say, oh, can you take a picture of me and my kid? And if you have those other apps open, Venmo request, Venmo send, Zelle, whatever you have on there. So just be careful.
Sorry.
I
The
have
other
another
thing,
question.
the other thing is don't react. So you get an email and it's on your phone and it has things in it and you think, oh my God, I can't believe that this institution or this vendor or whatever is asking me this stuff, or I haven't paid, or I did something, or somebody's contacting me. It's all about urgency. Step back. Don't respond on your phone. Period. Don't. You've got time. Step back. Go home.
Have another question over here.
I would like to ask, what could be the biggest threats in the upcoming years with cybersecurity and AI?
You know what, the disaster recovery thing is a part of that. So Megan and I talked about this morning. Being able to operate your business when there's nothing else. It all goes away. No phone, no laptop, no internet, no nothing. Being able to operate in that environment. So being able to have your customer list, your vendor list, the really key things you need to run your business in the event that everything shuts off. Not saying it's gonna happen, but if you're prepared for it, you could still run your business regardless. Where is your line in the sand for that? If your building isn't there, you can go somewhere else and do business. If the state isn't there, do you care anymore? It's where your disaster recovery line in the sand is. And kind of knowing that is gonna be that, preparing for the crazy will help you feel better about the whole thing.
So AI lowers the bar, and research has shown, right, that the emails are getting better. The technology for attackers to attack is getting better, and for social engineering, vishing, right, that voice saying, I'm your boss and I want those gift cards and I don't care what you have to do to get them. It's all getting better. So it's lowering the bar. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, we're gonna have to find ways to combat that. More ways. I mean, one of the things we all can do is raise the culture of cybersecurity. It's still shameful if there's an incident or you get, you clicked on something or whatever. Stop, that's gotta stop. There have to be regular conversations. We talk about this at the MassCyberCenter all the time. Regular conversation, build a culture of cybersecurity in your organization. Talk about, take 10 minutes. We have a card game with scenarios that you can get online at the MassCyberCenter.org. And take a scenario. Take 10 minutes at your staff meeting, talk about, if this happened here. Do we care? What would we do? Are we prepared? Do we know who we would call? Do we have insurance? What do we need to do? So it's all about being prepared. AI lowers the bar, makes everything more urgent or more plausible, and I think that's, now, I'm sure Kevin's got more research, I'm sure.
Well, here's some good stats coming from Stanford. So 88% of data breaches are caused by humans. Okay, so right there. And then the other 12% are caused by misconfigurations of technology done by humans. So you can do the math. I can even do the math on there, the history danger. That's 100% is caused by humans. So that's one to know. To follow up, I led that one on a disaster recovery. Like, what are you going to do? Every company is a tech company now. No matter what you do, whatever business you're in, you're tied to a network. The network goes down, you're screwed, right? You can't run your business. So you need to have, backup. And it's not just backup of the personally identifiable information where it's, you can recover it. It's all encrypted. So if they get it, it doesn't matter. They're getting gobbledygook, so they can't use it. So that's great. And the regulators really can't come and hammer you for anything on that, or the class action attorneys. But it's also to understand that your business data, you all have these financial systems, your HR systems, they're all on these software as a service platforms. So you have to make sure that all that data in there is backed up, it's immutable, and you can get it. So if your systems are locked, okay, that data is stolen, you still have access to that data. It doesn't mean you're gonna be up and running in a day, 2, but maybe 3 or 4, you have that data and you can upload and you get your systems going, you have access and you can run your business. If you recall, remember we talked about this on a webinar, the CDK, the Volkswagen, like all those other car dealerships, their CRM went down. And I remember I was buying a Volkswagen at the time, and I went in and the guy was telling me like, oh, you probably heard we have this massive data breach, we have no access to our data, and he had a yellow notepad, and he was taking my name, information, and they couldn't sell me a car. It took them 3 weeks to do so. Which was great for them, I guess, but not for me. I needed a car. So that's, the key here is, the threats are real. What Meg talked about, like, the email now is just ridiculous. And again, there's gonna be technology, technology has to fight the technology here, because you can't rely on individuals, no matter how well you train them, we're all gonna get duped. So, you need those filtering systems as best as we can get, to fight this off.
So it's over the next couple of years in payments, we're gonna be moving more digital, so checks are gonna continue to decline, right? So the trick there is we're gonna be worrying about speed. We're gonna be moving more towards instant payment, credit push models. You're gonna hear terms like FedNow or RTP, stablecoin. Over the next couple of years will become a payment option. So as businesses, even if you're a business that's just out sending your techs in the field, a lot of your payments are gonna be done over phones over the next couple of years. So that phone security is something we're really worried about from a payment standpoint, is because people couldn't secure the machine, and they're gonna be even worse with the phone, especially if it's dual purpose, their own phone that they do work on. People don't treat their phones as consumers the correct way, so that's a concern for us moving forward.
Yes, I represent a telecom service provider and a vendor, but one of the things we do offer is health checks. And I'm not making the pitch, I'm just saying these are all elements of it. And one of them, of course, is disaster recovery, what you just talked about. Does the company actually have a disaster recovery plan? And if they don't, do they have a managed service provider that can provide that for them as part of this service? But back to the phone issue, it's not just the mobile phones anymore, right? Your desktop is an IP address, right? And there's vulnerability testing involved in that too. So these are services that can be preventable versus reaction.
Yeah,
What we got here?
wow.
Right here.
Just just a warning. My husband is an IT expert who was at a commodities company. And one of the admins was about to transfer $100,000. And he said, doesn't the boss demand multiple checks? And she said, the boss is on vacation and he told us not to bother him. The person who had hacked the company's email had been looking at it for 2 months, was writing emails using the exact wording that VPs and presidents and CEOs would use, found out that they paid attention, followed the Red Sox, so always added a Red Sox comment. Signed off. Toodles was someone's goodbye. So they started using that. They had followed the company for at least 2 months to know when the boss was going to be out of the country and inaccessible. And my husband picked up the phone and dialed the boss and said, I'm sorry to bother you on vacation, but were you sending $100,000 to Taiwan? And the man said, not a chance. And just a warning, they're paying attention for months.
And that's a great point. So part of what they do is they sit on your backup until your backup has cycled through the 90 days, the 120 days or whatever. So your encrypted backup is now encrypted by them. So they can sit there and wait in the backup and be patient. They have the time to be patient now.
Yeah, the average reach and like intrusion into companies, the bad guys are usually in the systems for at least 200 days. Look at the Verizon data breach report every year since 2012, it talks about it. It's unfortunate. I have a question about the insurance. I think when I hear a lot of folks talk about, okay, I got a policy, I'm covered, right? Transfer of risk is only one of the 4 ways to actually address risk management. When you're looking to pay out a claim that's been made, how often and how kind of scrutinous are you on, well, you said in the application that you had MFA and you did backups, you have email security solution, but I can see that the bad guys got in and you had no email security solution, you didn't have MFA, you didn't have backups. And the business owner sitting there going, well, I have a cyber insurance policy I should pay out. But in fact, you didn't actually have the controls. So the costs, right, are like, you need the things in place first. You can't just get insurance to just kind of cover it, right? In lieu of getting and doing kind of the right things. How scrutinous now are the underwriters and the claims process being on that insurance policy when they're looking at, a claim being filed?
Yeah, so as an agent, I represent the client and I help them submit the claim to the insurance company. And absolutely, cyber insurance is like any other insurance. If you tell the insurance company for your homeowner's policy that you have a burglar alarm, and your house is broken into and they find out you didn't have one, or you did at one point, but you stopped paying it, the insurance company is gonna look for a way to get out of paying that claim. That's just, the first thing they're gonna do is go through the application, go through exactly what happened. That's their business. So if you say you use MFA and you don't, or you didn't on that specific occurrence, I can't speak for them, but in my experience, I would say the adjuster is going to say, you didn't have the MFA, we sold you this policy contingent upon you using it, you saying you used it, and that changes everything. That's exactly what they'll say. They weren't charging the appropriate premium because that was based on misinformation.
Brian, that's a great question. And the way it plays out, think of this, you were just hit with a cyber attack. So you're a victim, right? So you're working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Attorney General, but that same day you become a defendant too, because the regulators are coming right after you, okay? Because they think you did something wrong. It's never like, oh, you were a victim. You have this personally identifiable information, your customer data, you did something wrong, there's a data breach. So now you're a victim, okay? Now you're a defendant. So you're defending against the regulators, class action lawsuits. And now what you just said, you got the trifecta, you're also a plaintiff because you're now going to sue your insurance company as well. So think of all those lawsuits involved and who wins? Pat, you want the mic?
So, in all seriousness, though, when those things do happen, that's why you wanna have an attorney ready, because although you might be a victim and potentially a plaintiff, you're going to be under investigation. You will likely become a defendant. So when you call your attorney, even though the privilege is not absolute, it does preserve some of the information and the communications that come out of whatever incident is. So, and then that is critically important going forward, should, you know, you become a defendant or a plaintiff or are under investigation.
Not just from insurance, but think about Main Street Bank, all of you sign agreements that contain security procedures. If you agree to dual control on your payments and you're not using it, the bank's gonna act the same way that an insurance company would and say, hey, we gave you the service because you agreed you were gonna process your transactions in a certain manner, and you didn't. So if they catch you sharing passwords, things like that you shouldn't be doing, and you have an ACH or a wire that goes out, good luck. I mean, you can always sue the bank, but they're gonna fight. It's not like years ago where banks were just saying, sorry, we'll split the loss. Because the regulators look at them from a liquidity standpoint, so you can't keep doing that. Putting the whole system at risk if banks just paid out all that $12 billion in losses, if banks just repaid that to everybody, we're talking about liquidity issues now in the system, so, yeah.
I think we have another question.
I have one question. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very informative and I'm glad to be here. We at the Boys and I work with the Boys and Girls Club, and one of the things that we've noticed, which was strange, thank goodness we've not been hassled, but we paid $12, just saying, from what the very first thing you mentioned. Someone sent an email to a resource development officer and said, I want to donate to the club as I'm concerned. I love kids and I want to donate to the club, and sends a check. I mean, after 2 weeks of communication with this person, sends a check from their family foundation for $4,200. We're very excited about this check, and then we deposit in the bank. It's very authentic, and the bank comes back a couple of days and say, we're charging you $12 for this check could not be cashed. And then we was like, what? And we reach out to this guy, he's gone. Now, my question to you is, have you had such a situation, and what is the reason for someone just sending a check that is fake?
Tell you why they did that, my friend. Because when you cash that check, right, on their statement on the other side, they now have your account number. They can see where the check was deposited into on the other side. That's why people send out bogus checks. Yep, yeah, we used to see this in political donations too, right? They would just have you sign up to, pay money to a campaign. And you think, oh, 50 cents, no big deal. They weren't doing it for 50 cents. They were doing it for your account number. And that's the exact reason why people send you fake checks. Because when you deposit, it shows up on their end where it goes in. So.
Actually, that gives us a great introduction to Nicole from Main Street Bank. We're just gonna go over some just basic services or safeguards that you can implement just for to secure your everyday assets and financial.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate it. This is one of the biggest steps to help your business, educating yourselves and educating your staff. So use us as a resource. We have other resources on our bank website as well that you can go through training modules yourself. We can help point you in the right direction. If we don't have exactly what you need there, we can try to help point you towards a resource that we have here at the bank, because we are constantly going through trainings ourselves to make sure that we're always staying on top of it, constantly changing things. Making sure that you're monitoring your online banking daily. Look at your accounts. Please look at your accounts every day. Quick login, a couple times a day, make sure that nothing going through seems a little funny. Even if it's a small debit or a small credit, those are micro credits and debits. That's how they test your account to make sure it's actually valid. Consider having a separate PC that you actually log into your online banking from and do those online transactions from, where there's no email on there. So you're not going to risk compromising that PC because you're not actually clicking into any email there. If there's an email compromise, that PC is different from the one that there may have been an email compromise on. So that's another option for you. Dual control, so one person sets it up, another person sends it out. MFA, everybody's been talking about MFA, that's another huge one. Speaking with your bank about their fraud prevention items that they have, we have positive pay here. I know Emily spoke to it. It's huge. We have check positive pay. The system literally will look to what you tell it for what checks you've issued. It will verify based on the check number, the dollar amount, the date issued, and the payee. If anything is different on that data from what you told the system it is, it's throwing a flag up and it's saying, this doesn't look right. And it's gonna put it through as an exception for you to go in, look at it and go, oh yeah, I, put it in as $100 instead of $1,000. My bad, go ahead and pay it. Or no, that's a fraudulent check and you're stopping it dead in its tracks. We also have ACH as well for ACH positive pay. So you're telling us what vendors are approved to debit out of your account. You can even put a dollar threshold on that. So you're okay with Verizon debiting, but only up to $500. We can set that up for you. And if anybody other than Verizon, or if Verizon comes through at 600, it's again gonna flag that transaction for you to go in and actually take another look at it and review it. Let's see here. So checks, don't use them a ton if you don't have to. Seek other payment methods. There's just, as Shannon mentioned, there's at least 12 people who are touching every check that you send out from when you start to write it to when it goes off in the mail and then ends up hopefully where it's supposed to end up. So, yes.
One of the things too that we started doing with the vendors, we work with obviously a lot of different vendors. We have one account that gets swept out, so it only has what it needs to have in there for those vendors. And that is kind of the public account. So it's not, there's not a lot of money in there. There's not, if something happens to it, it's very little. And it requires more management to do that, but it can also make you a lot more secure because they don't have access to your other accounts.
The other thing to do, if you don't expect any debits, have the bank set up a credit only account so that people can only pay in and not pull out. And if they try to pay in, it gets rejected. And then to the check thing, one last thing on checks. For years, we would say, don't put them in the box, go to the local branch of the post office. Just Google how many post office employees at branches have been indicted the last 6 months. You can't even go to the branch anymore. You need to find a way to get off of checks. The government just threw us all a lifeline by saying the government's no longer gonna do checks. That typically starts to lead other industries to say no more paper. Because for every $2, every check, $2 of every check written in cash in the United States right now goes to fraud. So the amount of checks has declined, the amount of check fraud has gone up, so you could do the math, like 1 out of every 15 checks is fraudulent. It's an absolute chaos. The Boston Federal Reserve Bank did a great study on this. If we haven't scared you enough, go read that study on check fraud. The numbers are blowing, and there's just no way around it. You can't give it to a courier, they're gonna steal it. You can't give it to the post office, they're stealing checks. There's no way out. There's no way to, unless you drive it to where you want it to go. And then you gotta hope they don't have a crook at the lobby there.
Right there, and
We think we have a couple of questions coming.
Hi, I just wanted to know your thoughts on, say you go to the vendor's site, say National Grid or Eversource, we have multiple accounts that we pay with them. And we enter our bank information in their website and pay on their website. But we do have the ACH positive pay in our bank.
so that kind of goes back to the separate account.
Yeah. So aside from, you're gonna be protected with the ACH positive pay. What you're not protected from, is if they have a breach on that website, then somebody could start making bogus checks, but if you have check positive pay as well, it's not gonna matter to you. But typically that we have rules, especially for ACH, that require those people to have processes, procedures, controls in place to protect data at rest and in transit. So, at some point we have to trust somebody, but, bill pay is a great tool where you're controlling the payment going out as opposed to them.
Say National Grid, they have 5 accounts that pay.
Yep. Yeah, so there's memos, you can, yeah, so I mean, it's some, listen, I run an ACH association, keep doing ACH debits, I love it. But, you know, a separate account is a great idea, especially those of you with payroll, because the most important thing to do is pay.
Just following up on this gentleman's situation where, somebody sent them a check and he cashed it in the balance, now they have his account information. What do you do about that? We had a similar situation where, somebody sent us a check through ACH. It cleared our account, or it didn't clear our account, and my business partner, refunded the money because they canceled the project and the money was gone. So once they have your account information, what do you do?
So there's a couple things, get all the positive pay products, right? So, because closing an account and starting a new one it's a headache. So those positive pay products are designed so you don't have to do that. The other thing is you wanna try to go back and figure out why did this happen in the first place? Because again, even though you have things like positive pay, it just sends you an exception. If somebody accidentally clicks pay it, then positive pay doesn't stop anything, right? So if somebody does an online account takeover, they go in and manage all your positive pay items and say pay. It's not a bulletproof vest. But yeah, you just, again, with payment fraud, always go back to the beginning of where was we gotta lock down that beginning part. So whether it was, on the other side, on the vendor, always reach out to, in this case, try to find out what happened on their side, right? I don't work with vendors if they demonstrate they have a problem with fixing problems, right? So you can always find vendors that are gonna do better with your data, with their own data. This is gonna be part of business going forward, is you're gonna make decisions based upon who practices data the best and who's, doing things the right way, especially in a digital environment.
Right, one of the things that my company does, and this is, I would say, for small business or individuals, is kind of suggest things to do to keep your house, personal life, et cetera, safer. So you guys have been talking about cybersecurity health checkup. It was more eloquent than that. I don't remember the phrase, but if there's one place you could point people, whether it's for their personal or small business, where would they start with a health checkup?
All right, I can project. So you can, a health check. So that's like an assessment, for how you're doing, and I don't know from a personal standpoint where you go and get that, although I'm sure there are places to do that. I mean, at MassCyberCenter, we have GPT. Well, at MassCyberCenter, we have a bunch of resources so that, it'll talk about what is multi-factor authentication and why is it important, how to protect yourself from a basic level. But in terms of having somebody come in and assess, I would say from a small business standpoint, we have something called the minimum baseline of cybersecurity for small business. Okay. It's based on the CIS controls. There are 18 of them, the basic ones. And so you can go through that and it'll lead you through, it follows, we have 4 goals, basically, 4 basic goals that are, you can map them to other frameworks. CIS 18 is probably good, but it's, do you train your employees or do you do training at least annually? Do you share information? Do you have an industry group that you're part of where you can share cybersecurity information? You can collaborate on projects, things like that. Do you have an incident response plan or a disaster recovery plan, and what's in there? Who are you gonna call? What's your most important data? Do you have a team of people who are gonna help you with stuff? So how do you recover? What are the lessons learned? What controls do you put in place after the fact? And then finally, securing your environment, which is the biggest of them, right? Because that gets into the technologies and the policies And we have some sample policies on the website, and we have other things. So if you look at that minimum baseline of cybersecurity for small business, it will give you a lot of pieces to go through, including some templates, some resources. We have a grant program, for example, that will help with managed detection and response and some assessment, so that, there are tools out there to do this. That can help you.
That's on your website.
And that's at MassCyberCenter.org. Yeah.
And the bank you talked about, they have a whole learning area too.
Right.
You know, there are places. Any of the people on the panel maybe you can reach out to chat with.
All right, so just being sensitive to time. We can stay and ask a few more questions, but I know we were stopping at 9:30. We're a little over, so if you have to go, go. I was just, those who want to stay, I was gonna have each panelist just give just a takeaway for the group, especially where the resources, we have a lot of information on our website, and honestly, Nicole will be around, I'll be around, Jen will be around, and Karen will be around to just ask questions just about, positive pay or anything like that, where you start with security at your banks and go from there, and you guys will all be around. So I asked each one to say a final, give some advice, the last bit of the takeaway that you want to share with them, so.
Yeah, I think from a very basic level, I think the takeaway is, what are the best practices for your business, whether you're small, medium size, or you're a large corporation? And that really comes back to educating yourself, having the appropriate policies and procedures and mechanisms in place to try and prevent an incident from occurring. And I think that's really the takeaway is education and training.
Yeah, and on that too, I agree 100%. But, one takeaway is just think of all the information you have on your iPhone or your Android, and, you need to secure this. And I like what you said about the bank providing information. If you bank with your bank, you probably have a ton of emails giving you all this information on how you can secure your iPhone, and that's a great place to start.
Payment standpoint, time is not your friend, so if you notice anything off on your account, call the bank immediately, don't play detective at the company. The longer you wait, the faster the money mule gets the money on the other end and it's gone. So time is not your friend, so don't be ashamed, call the bank immediately. You're not with this bank, you're with another bank, you should have your cash management officers phone number at the ready, reach out, call them, tell them, hey, we got this weird transaction, they'll look into it for you. So we're working, but that's like what we would talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's
Speaking the torch.
Just when it comes to cyber insurance, understand what you're buying. Work with an agent that has experience. It's been around for a long time now, so work with an agent that deals with cyber insurance, knows the different insurance companies that offer the best products. And do not buy it online. Don't go to an online insurance company, answer a few questions and get your cyber policy, because it's probably not worth the money that you're spending on it.
Like I talked about staff meetings, the more you talk to your staff, the more you include your staff. Local vendors, working with local vendors, people that you know, makes it a lot easier to walk into your bank, to walk into your electrician, or call your electrician, to have the people in your world that will be there when you have an issue. Making sure you're communicating with your IT company on a regular basis, that you know who they are, that you contacted them, and that do follow up at least twice a year. Sometimes quarterly is even better, so you kind of have a sense of what's going on. It's housekeeping, daylight savings time's coming up, change those batteries, have somebody look at things.
And have a plan. Have a plan. So, cyber incident response planning, if something happens, what are you gonna do? Have a plan in advance, because it's gonna help you get through it with less of an impact if you can have a plan in advance.
Wait a minute, Nicole wanted to add something.
Sorry, I was gonna do that a little bit, but that's fine. Also, I know we touched on it a few times, but please make sure you are verifying those payment instructions. If you get an email with, pay us, we have a new bank, or our account was compromised, it could be true. Call a phone number that you have on file already, not the phone number in that email, because you're just nice enough to verify it with the fraudster if you call that number in that email. call a number that you have on file and verify that information versus just going blindly off of that email. That is like one of the number one ways that they get you to be kind enough to change those payment instructions. And then you just send a wire or an ACH out right to the fraudster.
Oh, great advice. I'm telling you, if you think it's fraud, you have a doubt, then I would guarantee almost 100% it is. So take the advice and, reach out, always call a person at Main Street Bank. You actually will get a person. We don't use the AI, so. And they'll be able to direct you. I really, this was great. I appreciate the panelists will be around. We'll all be around for a little while. There's more coffee, food. Oh, and the best part too, I forgot, we have a little raffle.
Everybody put something in? It's still here?
Yeah. Did everyone put their cards in?
We have some Main Street Bank swag and a gift card to the Hanover Theater.
Oh, Scouting America,
Ah.
Jason Pig, he left, yeah, but we can get that to him. So, really take the opportunity if you have some questions, personal questions or whatever to speak, have some more food. We got a ton of pastry, food. Coffee.
For the road.
Thank you all for coming out with that. This morning.
Yeah. You've got a bell.
Here, yeah.
Oh, I just want to throw those, like,